Meghan Markle and her husband Prince Harry traveled to New York City on Monday to mark Nelson Mandela Day. The Duke of Sussex addressed an informal gathering of the United Nations (UN) General Assembly with a keynote speech covering climate change and poverty. Professor Pauline McLaren has claimed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are shaping a much firmer role in the U.S. The author and professor of marketing and consumer research at Royal Holloway University told Express.co.uk, Harry and Meghan are more likely to carve out their own paths. They appear to actually welcome the freedom from the royal strictures and codes of behavior that they have to follow. I think we see them shaping a much firmer role for themselves in the States. The Sussex trip to New York and engagement at the UN headquarters marked their first joint public outing since the Platinum Jubilee last month. Both Meghan and Harry tend to keep a low profile in their new home, the exclusive enclave of Montecito, California, and are rarely spotted. However, Meghan is reportedly busy working on her latest venture, a podcast with Spotify that tackles typecasting among women. Archetypes was announced in March with a trailer released on the streaming platform. Introducing the podcast, the Duchess said, "I'm Meghan, and this is Archetypes, the podcast where we dissect, explore, and subvert the labels that try to hold women back. I'll have conversations with women who know all too well how these typecasts shape our narratives. And I'll talk to historians to understand how we even got here in the first place." According to a report in Closer magazine, the Duchess is throwing herself into producing the podcast, which is expected to be released this summer. A potential guest for the podcast may be feminist Gloria Steinem, who sat down with Meghan and Vogue magazine last month to talk about the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn the 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling. During the conversation, the Duchess urged people who are scared about the ripple effect of the Supreme Court's decision to channel that fear into action and head to the ballot box in November, when Americans will cast their votes in the midterm elections. Meghan and Ms. Steinem were spotted in New York together on Monday. The pair were first connected over voter registration efforts during the coronavirus pandemic, with the two even sitting down for a talk on the subject with Makers in 2020. Their recent Vogue interview positions the Duchess closer to the political arena, and further suggests that Meghan has an interest in a more active role in U.S. politics. Meanwhile, Harry is understood to be working on his docuseries about the Invictus Games, which is set to be released on Netflix. The Duke launched the Games, a sporting event for sick or injured military personnel and veterans, back in 2014 when he was a working royal. Despite stepping down from his royal duties, Harry remains the founder and organizer of the event. Following in his mother's footsteps, he is also the Chief Impact Officer for mental health startup BetterUp and advocates for mental health access across the world. While Meghan appears to have clear goals in the States, some experts believe that Harry wants to return to his home country. Speaking on his YouTube channel, Neil Sean claimed that despite appearing to have made LA his permanent home, the Duke's recent UK trip for the Platinum Jubilee may have caused him to consider seeing his fellow royal family members more often. He said, according to that good source, Prince Harry is getting a little bit jaded with the LA lifestyle. You have to remember, this is a man who has had his life shaped for years by a diary, by set holidays, stuff like that. It's very hard once you've had that sort of life to click out of it and start again. While the Sussexes live overseas, they have held on to their former royal residence, Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. In fact, the pair renewed their lease on the property shortly before they traveled to the UK for the Jubilee. Princess Eugenie and her husband Jack Brooksbank had been living in the cottage since the Sussex exit, but the pair recently decided to split their time between Portugal and London, meaning that Frogmore is likely to be unoccupied. The Sussex renewal of the property could point to more frequent returns from the family of four. Harry has made it clear that he wants his two children, 3-year-old Archie and 1-year-old Lilibet, to know his country.